Can you please help out with
this is it.
so you're going to start nonetheless while you are.
Yeah.
So if
Madam, come. Because I don't know how to help. I
after
don't have my number.
I'm going to have to make somebody else.
I don't know.
Doesn't matter. So okay.
We'll see.
Everybody go out.
Where's your WhatsApp?
Pleasure to welcome you
Where's your WhatsApp?
to the first session of this panel. We have news, presentations, material demonstrations, and for 60 sessions to say we have two sessions here. Yesterday, we have published papers and given some reports conversations. I have to share this panel and I think this
I'm not sure.
my life to share. I was also at Montreal University in Canada. My teaching and self-interest was learning to do African and Black diaspora literatures and types of narratives. I'm doing as fine as well. It's very also informed that we told you across 12 sessions this final 19 papers. Planet still we have technology from this class. So today we have a very like you. Do we have any other line?
Not yet.
Okay, so most likely we start the share of the books. So today we have two finals. I should let you know very quickly. But even on the final is not about the things. So we have four. I think this is why all the people. The other is a time. No, so I have 2 minutes each bias. And then we have some time in terms of which was 5 minutes of conversations on the page, the presentations. I should let you know that this time sits to engage a couple of questions. There are some questions on the line, some of these presentations. For example, what's balance interested in helping us to think through what's it's a challenge. I really find that this panel is interested in wrestling with the concepts of children without childhood. Who are these human beings? What does it mean to be a child without childhood? What are the specific parts of life and the response to the response the loss of childhood? And we're also interested in whether children who lost their childhood exhibits or demonstrates agency. And if the team, what also is the organization. In other words, children without childhood who occupy a gray zone, the real space, in between space, which is in which this opposes. They are neither fully children, no, I think the West is the worst type of children. So they occupy the zone. So this zone that we want to what are the positives there? And what are the possible negatives? So, and also what was the time the degree to which history collapse traditional boundaries and increase cost level. In other words, house of Rasi, the activities are being, in this case. So these and many other questions underlying the big parts section. Listen to those and those. We have this one, so that the finance machine is after like that. So on that note, I want to show you once again. I'm trying to knowledge. Yes. How we can do things. So we will have this take the images of the attack, which I'm going to show you first. So I'm going to show you the paper, because it's 3 minutes for the explanation of the attack. And you will have the presentations in order of outline in the program. So once Anna goes first, write that follows, when we need to message them, every material and wrapping up. We don't have Google today. It's just written to me yesterday at standard meeting to make it online. So that's the order in which we will progress. Each panelist, please take about a minute or thereabout to introduce yourself to us. Let's know your disciplinary interests, what you research, what you teach, what projects you must be working on. Amongst other things that you might be interested in. And at the end of your, you would be very glad to welcome, we are our audience to engage this papers. So on that note, it will be my pleasure to use the floor to our first presenter, who is Anna, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Voice Foundation. I'm Dr. Anna from Delta State University, Africa, Department of Theatre Arts. I specialize in children's theatre and costume. I'm presenting today the topic, childhood, broken home, and the family, perspective from the theatre. Africans originally have respect for the sacredness and sanctity of marriage. Thus, with the involvement of both parents, made it a concretized formality. So, but that's my introduction. But with civilization and migration that has made the world a global village, this paradigm has changed. Couples are quick to act for the change. Sorry.
It's a light more common the better combination here.
My phone. Couples are quick to opt for the choice of divorce and separation because to them it is a modern way of solving marital problems. So many, now look at, I'm still looking at it, many children are victims of these decisions taken by their parents these days. Hence, children feel the absence of the other partner, the other parent they are not staying with, and because the parent, the person they are staying with is burdened with the problem of caring for them, maybe feeding them and all that. So their moral and cultural and ethical training are neglected. So I go to the next slide, please. So I look at childhood. Childhood is a period in human existence that development takes place. It is usually between the age of birth and adolescence. It cuts across the era. It's also the era of mental and physical emotional growth and development. It is that time it occurs in humans. So childhood can also be a period of life when children are very innocent and they act and respond to issues around them according to their instincts. They do not take responsibility for anything. They totally depend on their parents' guidance, on any adult around them for protection. So I want to talk about broken homes. The word broken homes was first recorded in 1840. Broken homes, a home is referred to as broken when the two persons involved takes a decision to go their separate ways. Broken homes arises because of disputes such as financial issues, sexual misunderstanding, unfaithfulness, education problem, health problem. You know, these problems affect the administration of the home, and because they are not properly handled. Broken home can also be, a broken home can make a child insecure and develop fear. When they see their other friends that have good homes, the way their parents, they behave, they are not secure and they are not happy. I want to talk about families. Family is the basic unit in the society consisting of parents and their children. According to Austin Anigala in 2018, in his book Aspects to Theater Studies, he explained that prior to recent times, family lineages were preserved through birth and upbringing of biological children. But these days, adoption of children has become an acceptable way of making a family. Also, when you talk of family, the members of the families are the most significant people during the early years of the life of a child. The family is the first agent of socialization, where a child receives empowerment to grow as a representative of the family and the society. The family is very important to the society, as the society is made up of different families. And there are basically two types of family structure: nuclear and extended family. So the theoretical framework for this work is from Sigmund Freud, psychoanalysis theory of the 19th and 20th century. We say that the theory focused on the instructive mindset of children, and that childhood experiences and relationship has the tendency to influence their behavior in adulthood. This can be used to infer that childhood character, relationship, and upbringing methods adopted by parents, caregivers, guardians can determine the child's behavioral pattern at adulthood and force them to become adults when they are still in the era of childhood. I want to look at the method and data presentation. The qualitative research methodology was adopted using structured questionnaire and a theater for development production. The focus was on 20 families who were divorced, 20 couples living separately but not divorced officially, and 20 children from the divorced homes, and 20 children from parents who live separately but not officially divorced. A total of 80 respondents were involved, and a theater production was enacted. The questionnaires were analyzed by simple percentage. Section A was on demographic data of respondents, which comprises of age, gender distribution. That was in my table 1 to 4. Question B talked about the knowledge about broken home and its impact on children. These questions were asked: are you conversant with the term broken homes? Is this concept a common practice now? To what extent can divorce or separation be traced to the emotional and mental state of children from broken homes? What are the economic and social challenges faced by children from broken homes? These were in my table 5 to 8. Section C deals with the indirect implication of divorce, broken homes, and separation on the children. How do children view this problem? What are the indirect consequences on the children from these homes? What are the impacts of broken homes on family and society? So the section D, the theater perspective. These questions were asked. How does the early introduction of children to positive theatrical production help remedy this menace? What should theater practitioners do to address this situation? This is the core of my work. What theater practitioners can do to help either reduce or be able to salvage this situation. In that, the production was enacted by 15 persons. A group was formed by 15 persons, and a production was enacted. And the production, the title of the production, My Child No Go Lost. I'm from Delta State, and the part of Delta State where this production took place is in Oria, in Abraka. And that in that part of Nigeria, we speak more of pidgin. And we looked at it. My son no go lost. This production came up. The storyline was about a woman, that despite the intervention of the parents, the in-laws, and everybody, they eventually divorced. The couple divorced, and when they divorced, they could not come to terms with who will these children stay with. So the children now decide to stay with their mother, and their mother was a market woman that was so busy in the market, doesn't have enough time. She doesn't have enough time for them. So she did not even know what was happening to the children. And before you know, the girl was impregnated in GS2, and the boys started smoking. And no, they don't go to school. She was in the morning, she'll be in the market. If you know Abraka market, you understand what I'm talking about. In the morning, we'll be in the market from morning to night. When he comes back, she's tired. Wait food. She will sleep. And she got to know when the first son, Ochuko, was arrested. And with gang of boys taking Igbo, so taking drugs, they arrested them. It was then they called for the mother. It was then she knew that the children that will leave school in the morning, they don't go to school. They change their dress on the road and go straight to another place to do another thing. But it was late when she got to know. So when we came up with this production, and the production was part of those who were victims, because I worked among those who were victims. Part of those children that were victims, some mothers agreed to be part of it, but we did not get fathers because I don't know, they did not show up. So, but they came to watch the production, but they did not participate in the production. But after the production, there were discussions, there were feedback, and as the thing was progressing, we did this advocacy among them. And for now, we have about 2 or 3 of the children have gone back to their parents and gone back to school. And a couple has decided to come together again. And the work is still progressing. And we are hoping to take the production to another part of the community, because this is one part of the community. And that is the cross of my work, to know what theater can do to salvage this situation. And that is what we have done. So in that's my discussion. It was gathered from the research finding that there were many causes of broken homes as listed there. Let me not bore you with separation and divorce. I have many, the financial problem, lack of marital experience, unfaithfulness in homes. I also realized that broken homes were common trend in the society, especially among young couples between the age of 20 and 50. We're able to gather that those who married very, very early without any people they mentor them, any small thing triggers them to say, I'll go my way, I will not take no. And they'll go their separate ways without looking at the effect on the children. And theater practitioners are creative, skilled people who can explore creativity in diverse ways and manners to reach the unreached. Thus speak a creative language that both the educated and the uneducated can decode and understand. There's a creative language that both the educated and the uneducated can understand, and the theater people can speak that language. Theater practitioners can create awareness and instill empathy within the secular and larger society. The theater can investigate the challenges and experiences of divorce, separation, and single homes, and showcase them through their production and elicit reaction from the audience. So, like I've said, what the theater can do, and we have more there, but because of my time, I want to. Theater practitioners are creatively skilled people who can exploit creativity as a driver to solve so many problems. And this is one of the problems in the society that is affecting not only the parents, because the home is a unit of the society. So the problem is affecting the home and indirectly affecting the community, affecting the state, and affecting the nation. Conclusion, this study shows that broken homes were societal problems that is affecting the society negatively. The society is full of many frustrated people, deprived-minded workers, and insane people. That is as a result of unresolved marital problems, which is having a negative influence on the children as well as on the society at large. The theater practitioners should create an enable environment for more performances on the sacredness of marriage through love and how to make marriage work in order to enable success, the success rate of marriages. Many children became matured early than they ought to be because of wrong decision of their parents. Thank you for
that's part of the time. So yeah, please keep your questions once the presentations are engaged. Okay, we're going to the next.
Good morning, and share everyone in the course. Yes, I'm Dr. Balu Mola, and we are just University at Russia. I'll be speaking on the representation of non-combatant children in Nigerian constitution. I'll be making use of two different texts, which are works written for children. When I talk about non-combatant children, what am I saying? A lot of work has gone on about child soldiers, and especially from the adult tradition. Since the war ended in 1970, a lot of literary work has been written about the war, mainly for the adult readers. From the 70s, from the 80s, a lot of adult writers began to write about the war. But for children, it has been a little dicey. Writers have not been writing for them about the war. So when you look at it, they started writing about the war in children's texts in the 90s. Then the question is, why is that? Why did we have that happen? And reading through research, I realized that children's literature started the same time adult literature started in Nigeria. And it's written adult literature in English, 1947, when Cyprian and Quincy published Piccolo and Wrestler. In that same text, Fibian and Itayemi published No Sweetness Here in that same text, and that was for children. But somehow it has not been reckoned with in the purpose of children's literature. A lot of scholars have identified that generally children's literature in Nigeria has not enjoyed scholarship as much. American 2015, and since that 2015, OSAS 1985, CURSE 2016, but since 2015, there has been this shift. More people are looking towards children's texts. Now, if you look at all I was talking about the war. Now, the main authors of children's literature have not represented the war in literature at all. Chinua Achebe, Cyprian and Quincy, as popular, as important as they are, they wrote about post-traumatic interest in children after the war, but they did not really speak about the war. But female authors like Teresa Menu, sorry, let me come. I think I'm. Female authors like Teresa Menu, like Katrina, like Adumora Izegi, we have spoken about children's, they have represented this war in their children's literature. So there is a need to look at the children's literature and see how war is represented there. There has been an argument from the West about the representation or non-representation of war in children's literature. Some believe that you should not introduce children to violence at a very early stage. However, scholars like Armstrong, like Peter Sawyer, have made us realize that it is important for children to experience war within the safety of their homes so that they will have an understanding of how the evil there is in the war. Because most of the video games they play, most of these games they play show them that you just kill your enemy and move on with no effect. So it could make a child feel that if we have to go to war, then let's go to war. However, coming in contact with the war situation in print and seeing how it negatively affects a child can go a long way in helping them realize that war or war situation is not something they should be involved in. Now, again, why am I interested in looking at children? The representation of this non-combatant, I said earlier, child soldiers have been represented. Reading about the Nigerian war, we realize it was shown more as a humanitarian cause more than a political cause, because Biafra at that time was able to reach the international organizations by the pictures of children that were sent out about the starvation and the death of children in their numbers. So it was all about the children. To a large extent, the children were pushed out there as the pain. Yes, we not looked at how those children fared in their fiction in literature. So I go to this point, quote by Mahatma Gandhi, where he says, if we were to reach real peace in this world, and if we were to carry on the real war against war, we shall have to begin with the children. It's important for children to come in contact with this within a safe space so that they know why we should not fall in love with such a concept. Now, what are the objectives? We want to analyze the representation of non-combatant children in female of all Nigerian children's constitution. Remember, I said it's only females that have written about the war. So that's why I'm choosing only female content. Then we want to look at how the war defined the childhood of these children presented in the text. I use a qualitative design and make close textual analysis of characters and themes in Adelaide Guinness, That Wartime, and Adumora Izegi, who is very treasure. Through the framework of Steven Gambler's new historicism, where we look at the historicity of the text and how the text represents history and how history is represented in the text. The first theme I look at there is, and let's learn this, is the theme of death. History makes us understand that there are about 1 million to 3 million deaths in the Biafran war, and mainly about children, about 1 million of non-combatant children. Even those that actually went to war, the soldiers died less than those that stayed home. So the death is mirrored in this text in ways that the children touch. It showed how lives were wasted, how loved ones were lost, and how children had to deal with the loss of their loved ones. For example, in That Wartime. Okay, another thing about this, let me just give you a short synopsis of my text. Another thing about this text is That Wartime speaks of the actual war, the things that happened during the war, while the Great Treasure talks about the post-war period. So just sort of helps to explain stuff deeper. When we look at That Wartime, we look at that wartime, it tells us about the death of a lot of loved ones, how people lost the ones they lost, how people, lives that have been cared for and nurtured over the years, how they were lost. And it tells us about how the death of Ernest, the death of Jude, it tells stories, the death of the teacher who didn't even want to go to war, but had to go because people in his 8th grade were being conscripted and was tired of hiding. And eventually, 2 months after going into the war, it was his dead body that was brought back to the village. And Nelly, that's the protagonist of that wartime, says a lot of children will grow up in pains and in lack, and they will be told that, assuming your dad had not died in the war, maybe you could have been so, so, and so. And we see that played out in The Buried Treasure, where Ola, after the war, returns to her home to find it dilapidated, though she returned with her mother and her younger ones. But she could not go back to school because the mother could not muzzle the financial strength to send her back to herself and her younger ones. She had to start hawking to get money even for food for the younger ones. And there was a particular night she just sat down in front of her house and she lifted up her eyes to the sky and said, "Oh, Daddy, if only you had not died." You know, it resonated with what has been said in that wartime about death. Another thing, I move on to the next one, is displacement. In both texts, this topic of displacement is really foregrounded. From the very first page in that wartime, you've seen Nelly and her family running around trying to pick the most important things they needed to leave to run out of their house because they could hear the shelling at the back of and towards in their ears. So they were running, everybody was running, everybody was trying to pack things. And the younger brother at some point told the mom, can't we just take our television and tie it on top of the car? And the mother shouted at him. And as the mother was shouting, they just had shelling closer by. So they all had to run. That tells us of this disconnect, this haste in running out of what you had built, you had spent years in nurture. And then as they traveled along the journey, she kept telling us how she was going to a village where she had never been all her life. And then how they had to get there, get a house, and live a life she had never lived, a life she had never seen, going to the river to fetch water and all of that. So it tells us about that displacement. And again, another thing in that story is you see them moving from one village to another village. If they stay here a while, they will hear that the enemy is close by, so they'll have to pack their things again and run interland. So that level of displacement, and along the line, some children would get lost. Somehow their parents will go this way, they will go that way, and it's mirrored in this text. Again, in Ajimura is saying it was the buried treasure. Ola also speaks of that displacement, how their father had to send them to the village when the war started, and he couldn't keep them anymore. And they never got to see him again. He died before they returned. The next slide. And then we talk of loss of quality education. In that wartime, the protagonist, that's Nelly, the protagonist of that story, told us she had to stop school because they moved. And the first place they got to, there was an experimental wartime school. An experimental wartime school, but that school could not function properly because they had only 4 teachers. One was teaching French, one was teaching maybe German, and then the 2 others, they just knew what they could. So she said they spent much time on extracurricular activities, debates, songs, and their parents were just willing to let them go so that the mothers could catch some breath. So the school was not so much from the school. For Ola, 2.5 years that the war was on, she could not go to school at all. And after the war, she returned and could still not go back to school because there was no money to ensure she returns to school with her younger ones. So the war started when she was 8, and at 11, she was still out of school. So that story pushes that fact to every child so that you don't have this glorified idea of what a war is. Then it talks also of hunger. There are different articles, different journals, articles, newspaper articles that have told us about the level of hunger. More people died of kwashiorkor and marasmus than even the shelling of the land. So the hunger was palpable, or is palpable in each of these steps. You see how these children would have to go sometimes behind the enemy borders to get food from soldiers. They have to go and practically beg. And even in places where the Caritas, for example, brings food to their enclave, it's also the children. The mothers prefer to send the girls because they believe that they will bring their food intact, not pour it away on the way or something. So they will have to go and get food. To farm, they had to learn farming. For someone like Nelly and her siblings that had lived a comfortable life in Enugu before the war started, they had to start learning how to till the ground, make heaps, and all of that. So their mom was much more of cooking and doing all of that. They were the ones that would go into the forest to source for what would be eaten and bring it back home. So it shows that hunger for Ola, even after the war, when they returned, the mother could not afford to put 3 square meals on the table of her children. So Ola had to start talking, had to start fending for herself and the younger ones and the mother inclusively. The next slide. And that leads me directly to being saddled with adult responsibilities. As a young child of 11, she already had the responsibility of feeding her younger ones. And you see that also even in that wartime. You see Melove getting married to someone she doesn't like, she doesn't know, a 16-year-old girl, but because that person is a military man and can give her parents food, she got married to them. We have there's another character there, Amarachi, who also did the same thing, so that they could get food for their parents. Some will go prostitute themselves, and we have that also in that wartime. Girls going into prostitute themselves with even enemy soldiers, as it were, to get food to give to their family. So we have anxiety, the fear. They were always running and hiding. They would just hear the shelling, have to run and hide, bunker and all of that. And then rape. That wartime tells us about Joy and about a 13-year-old girl who was raped by a soldier within their community. And that brings about so much fear for the children. They could not afford to go out and play. They had to be conscious of what is going on around them. So the conclusion, an analysis of both texts as products and representation of history makes it possible to identify the effects of the Nigerian Biafran War on non-combatant children. This contributes not only towards reflecting the reality of the war, but contributes towards shaping ideologies that will inspire peace and non-violent resolutions. The last slide, please. The last slide, okay. So I'll just speak to that, sorry, I'll just speak to that. And why did it? Why did I conclude like that? In recent times, I hear people sing songs of war, like Nigeria is not working, we should all just go to war. And in my heart, I feel that it's because some of us did not experience this war firsthand. So it's easy to just say stuff out of the way. So bringing this to the fore is just to remind us of what our brothers and sisters went through and to tell us why we should not do that back. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to the chair of this panel, to my colleagues. My name is Bamidele Nelly Oluwanifemi, and I lecture at the Federal University of Technology, Akure. My research interest is in the representation of gender, family, and childhood issues in African literature with specific focus on the African novel genre. This morning, the title of my presentation is Childhood, Spousal Abuse, and Psychological Implications in Chasing Butterflies and Grace. Next slide, please. Oh, that's okay. What I have in that slide
is a quote by Amel and Nichols that says that although we can take children out of the violent environment, it can take years to take the violent environment out of them. As I go on in my presentation, we'll see why I referred to this statement. Next slide, please. In the next slide, we can see a little boy is quite far away from where the mother and father is. But we can see him using his two hands to, shut his ears from listening to whatever it is that is transpiring there. Also, as I go on in my presentation, we'll understand this picture better. To the introduction, so many people have started presenting from yesterday, and they've tried to lay some form of background on who a child is, or the definition of a child. And I remember that yesterday we foregrounded the fact that there's even controversy in research on the actual definition of a child. So I will just excuse all of that so that I can have sufficient time to discuss my topic. So I go to the definition of spousal abuse. Spousal abuse is described as a pattern of abusive and threatening behaviors wielded by a current or former spouse to establish and exercise power and control over the other. It can occur in heterosexual or same-sex relationships and may include physical, emotional, economic, and sexual abuse, as well as intimidation, isolation, and coercion. If you look at the slide, you see that I highlighted some particular words, and this is deliberate. To term, events as spousal abuse, it has to be a pattern that it's recurring. Sometimes there is some form of conflict or rift between husbands and wife. Doesn't mean that, we then term it as spousal abuse. But then when it's a pattern, is recurring, then there's some of abuse that is already going on there. And then I use the term spousal abuse because if you go into literature or to existing research, you will see that some scholars have used terms like spousal violence or domestic violence to conceptualize this idea. But I deliberately adopted spousal abuse because spousal abuse for me is a form of domestic violence. There are some other forms of domestic violence that occurs in the family unit. And then when we say spousal violence, it does not really cover other forms of abuse that are not physical. Abuse can be emotional, it can be economical, and so on and so forth. And in this study, we'll look at how all of these forms of abuse have effects on children. Spousal abuse is actually a very, very common phenomenon. Unfortunately, in Africa, it's one of the most underreported crimes. And the reason for this is because family issues, especially ones related with marriage, is perceived to be a private one. We have statements like, you don't involve third parties in your family affairs. You don't involve third parties in your marital affairs. I remember that one of the counsels that I got as a spinster going into her husband's house is, and these ideologies and some other patriarchal practices have caused victims of spousal abuse to remain silent. Another important fact that I would like to draw attention to is the fact that in Africa, both women and men are victims of spousal abuse. But while women victims, are more researched, gradual attention is being given to male victims of spousal abuse. And then we now have this group that are children that are not even considered as victims of spousal abuse at all. That's because in the course of my research, I discovered that there's a form of controversy on that topic. And scholars have argued that children cannot be termed as victims of spousal abuse because they are not direct sufferers of the abuse episodes or events. And this ideology is part of what this study condemns. Okay, in my investigation, in my investigation as a literary critic, I discovered that in recent time, there are some crop of creative writings that are imagined, that are depicting and documenting experiences of child characters that are trapped in homes where abuse occur. Unfortunately, majority of us may have read some of these books. I made reference to some of them. We have examples of Neshani Andreas' The Purple Violet of Bushantu, Mohamed Chukri's For Bread Alone, Nadifa Mohamed's Orchard of Lost Souls, Marilyn Award Mills, Float Girls, among others. But there's every possibility that we have read these books, but only, discover themes of spousal abuse and the effects on women, you understand? But I discovered that the authors of this book deliberately planted child characters and, placed subtle roles on them, on the roles that they perform when they witness the abuse of their parents and the effects of this abuse on such child characters. And as such, I believe that the experiences of such children should not be tossed aside or swept under the carpet. To this end, this study critiqued how children become victims of spousal abuse, since some research claimed that children are not victims of spousal abuse in the first place. So this work critiqued how children become victims of spousal abuse and the psychological effects of such events on child characters as portrayed in the novels selected. I used Yejide Kilanko's Chasing Butterflies and Barbara Boswell's Grace. From the list that I mentioned earlier, you see that there's actually a number of such tests, but for this presentation, I limited my analysis to just two. Yejide Kilanko is a Nigerian writer, and Barbara Boswell is a South African writer. I intentionally did that so that we know that it's not just a Nigerian thing. It actually cuts across the whole of Africa. Now, in the two novels, the major thing is spousal abuse, the abuse of the woman by her husband. In Yejide Kilanko, the family is a Nigerian one that has immigrated to America. But we see this man, immigrating to America with his patriarchal ideologies and, unable to adjust to what is obtainable in the American climate on how to treat his wife. As a result of this, they have a 3-year-old son named TJ, and he has a stepson, Jordan, with a white woman that is 9 years old, that are constantly exposed to his spousal abuse activities on his wife. The second one is Barbara Boswell's Grace, and the family is a South African one. Just like the male character in Yejide Kilanko, the woman in this novel seems to be more economically advantaged than the husband, and that creates a lot of conflicts within the family as the man's ego is bruised. So because of this, he's constantly abusing and inflicting some form of violence on the wife, and they have just a child who is the eponymous character in the novel. The novel is named after that child character, Grace, and she's also constantly witnessing the abuse of her mother by her father. The methodology used for this study is to situate this study within existing literature on the topic of childhood and spousal abuse. And I also subjected the two novels to close reading, textual and descriptive literary analysis. And then the experiences of the relevant child characters are analyzed through the lens of trauma studies by Kathy Parrott. Trauma studies is actually very wide, and there are so many critics with their own postulations when it comes to trauma. But I adopted Kathy Parrott's trauma study because of a major ideology in our conceptualization of trauma as the response to an unexpected or overwhelming violent event or events that are not fully grasped as they occur, but return later in repeated flashbacks, nightmares, and other repetitive phenomena. Literary scholars opine that adopting Parrott's trauma studies in literary analysis gives room for reflections on representations of atrocities and traumatic memories, and produce some of the most influential and far-reaching new insights about the human condition. So what this study does is to deploy relevant aspects of Katikaru's trauma studies in the critique of childhood experiences of spousal abuse as depicted in the novels selected. To our discussion, please. Okay, to save time, what I did is to identify how children become victims of spousal abuse as depicted in the two novels, and then discuss this vis-a-vis the psychological effects that such exposures pose on relevant child characters in the story. According to Child Welfare Information Gateway 2009, there are 4 major ways through which children are abused to spousal abuse. The next slide, please. Please, I would like us to look at the slide. And the first one is hearing abuse episodes. I take us back to the first picture that we saw. And we saw that that child was in a far distance, but he has his ears closed. So, you know, the research discovered that by merely hearing the abuse episodes, the children are affected by spousal abuse events. Now, you know, people may claim that the child is not even within the range of the occurring event. But from the analysis of the novels, by simply hearing, these children become traumatized. An excerpt is what I made in Grace, page 52. Says that the sounds of her father's fist landing on Mary paralyzed Grace. Mary is the mother and Grace is the child. While Mary screams while Mary screams where an agony ripping through her chest. What was he doing? She's asking questions in her mind. Like, what is her father doing? Trying to create mental pictures of what is happening behind closed doors. What is he doing to her? Where was he eating? She heard every note of the WAP symphony play out in grotesque detail. First, Mary's plea. Please, no, that's her mother begging the father. Please, no, please don't. His voice raised. His fist striking flesh. A fresh cry from Mary, another and yet another blow. Violent, electrifying, changing the hair, a thud against the cupboard, a crash, then a series of pathetic sobs. Mary's footsteps of Grace's bedroom door. Grace regulating her breathing, pretending to be asleep, pretending not to have heard. If we look at this excerpt, we see that, you know, even you know, in Africa, parents have a way of, you know, saving their face in the presence of their children. And most times, according to the novel, they wait for the girl to sleep before addressing the mother or shut the door against her so that she does not have a clue of what is going on. Despite the fact the child is able to recreate mental pictures of what is going on between her father and her mother. And as the reader goes on in the text, they discover that this incident comes back to her as hot flashes and dreams in distorted form. And this leaves her in constant fear and torment all through her childhood, even lingering on to her adulthood. Another way through which children are exposed to spousal abuse is witnessing the abuse events firsthand. In Chasing Butterfly, we have an excerpt here. Sorry, the light is gone. Tomide's right hand moved so fast. She didn't see it coming. That's the wife, Titi. Tomide is the husband. And the way the man, you know, swiftly slapped her face, the woman did not see it coming. But their son was in that place, witnessing what was happening. And the author recorded that when the mother turned back and discovered that her son was there looking, what happened was that she watched as her son wet, you know, his trousers, his light wear pajamas buttons with pee. This Jordan is 9 years old. In trauma studies, we call that regression. Unconsciously, this boy is subverted to something that a child that is younger will do because of the intensity of the slap that he saw that landed on his mother's face. All these are evidences of traumatic shock and the psychological toll that spousal abuse has on children. This excerpt depicts an instance of a recurring post-traumatic process. Okay, sorry. The third one is intervening to salvage abusive episodes. intervening to salvage abusive episodes. And you wonder, how can a child salvage the abuse of his or her parents? And this leads us to the fact that, due to this recurring issue of spousal abuse, children are prematurely transitioned into adulthood. The child character has to take on adult roles just to ensure that he or she does something so that the spouse that is being abused is not killed. And they want to pull away their mother from the hands of their father. In this particular context, it spirals down as the child's attempt to intervene in the abuse episode aggravates her father. And what the man does is to get hold of a knife and slits the wife's throat and he slits the wife's throat right in the presence of that child. The author says that for the rest of the life of that character, the child, the Grace, for many years, the unfolding of events remained blurry. At first, she remembered nothing. At the instance where that event occurred, she could not make anything out of it. Then gradually, images, smells, sound swarms back into consciousness, the way a photograph slowly gives up secrets after being submerged in developing fluid. Her mind could never fully grasp that day, could never hold on to the fact of what had happened. But as the years stretched by, moments of lucidity shone more frequently. This excerpt depicts an instance of recurring post-traumatic process. When the event happens, that's the traumatic, phase. But later on, when the effects are relieved, we call it post-trauma. The post-traumatic process in the life of Grace, where she relieves the mother of her mother through series of disturbing flashbacks. The actual event launches Grace into premature adulthood, as her mother is dead and her father is in prison for that crime afterward. Because of that, she has to figure out life on her own terms. And the reader discovers that she does this through flashbacks that linger on into her adulthood. The last one is seeing the aftermath of the abuse. And what does this mean? They may not even hear the abuse, they may not intervene, they may not witness it firsthand, but sometimes they see bruises, wounds on the parent's body. And this is the instance for TJ in Chasing Butterflies, where her mother claims that she's tired of the boy seeing her in a bloodied state. And just to see that this has effect on the boy, the teacher recalls and calls the mother that the boy, they are asked to make a drawing in school. But what the boy sketched out, the 3-year-old boy, is so strange. The teacher said he drew a stick figure mom on the floor, while stick figure dad loomed over her. In one drawing, large red teardrops trailed from stick figure's mom's face and pulled around her. The words, "Bad Dad," were written on the papers. The third drawing was a little stick figure lying in bed. The large eyes upside down smile painted a picture of sadness. To save our time, I'll just say that in Grace, the child character loses both her parents and is left to figure out life by herself. Because of this, she makes wrong life decisions. She pacifies herself through the use of true substance abuse, and she gets entangled with a male that appears to offer her the needed comfort, but who turns out to be an abuser just as her father. As a result, Grace becomes trapped in a vicious cycle of generational abuse. To conclude, the study picks on the family as a microscopic unit of the society and reveals how what transpires within the walls of the home can post-traumatic and post-traumatic experience that can disrupt the lives of innocent children. It argues through analysis of the noble selected that the role which a warm, loving, and stable home environment plays in the healthy development of children cannot be overemphasized. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, particularly for the backup. For this so we will take a final presentation. We will engage. Good morning, everyone.
Dr. Martina Morgan, and the title of the presentation this morning on mastering the Nigerian child, a critical analysis of political Nigerian literature and the 2023 Child Friendliness Index. So the brief introduction to this. Now, the African Child Policy Forum, also called the EFP, releases the Child Friendliness Index every year. The first one was released in 2009, and it is actually a framework to judge how well government policy is being implemented in protecting children's rights. The important thing about this for us to note that this Child Friendliness Index was first created for Africa, but now going forward, other countries have started adopting it and using it in their own research. This Delhi and the right pace that framework for measuring the protection and the enforcement of children's human rights. The future review. So now most governments have different reports that show that they have designed international policy, design laws. For instance, Nigeria signed the Charter of International Rights for Human Rights Law for Child and other child rights cases. But the essence of their commitment to children's rights vary widely, and the gap between promises and reality remains well. The thing is that there is a need to study the association between child friendliness and the subjective well-being of children in a comparative perspective. That's on Trashita 2020. As I said earlier, the Child Friendliness Index is a statistical framework that was designed to measure how well child rights is implemented by governments of African states. But there is limitations to the CFI. Before we go to the limitations of CFI, I'll talk about the three foundational pillars of the CFI. The three foundational pillars of the CFI is protection, provision, and participation. What is protection? Protection simply looks at what are the legal policy framework available against child rights abuse and exploitation. So what rules, what laws are in place against the abuse of a child's human rights? Then two, provision. Provision looks at what is the budgetary allocation for children to be loved. So when the government sets their budget, what percentage is given for child education, what percentage is given for child health, what percentage is given for the provision of the necessary services that children need. So if you access education, health, clean water, food, shelter, those are the things they look at. For instance, now, some countries can perform better by providing education. If education is actually free education. So for instance, Kenya does very provide free education, but it can fall short of your point for not providing clean water or potable and accessible water to all children. So they look at all strength points and teach them together. The third one is participation. Under participation, it means that how many children have said that when they grow, when they reach the age of, well, every country in the world is supposed to be the age of adulthood. So how many children have said that when they are adults, they would like to vote? How many children have access to reading newspaper? How many of them have agency at least? And all of that. But there is no data for that measurement. And that's where the limitation comes. The limitation, according to the African Child Policy Forum, it said it was found that data availability is a major challenge that to measure children's participation. There is lack of adequate child-related information, and which is an impediment to monitoring the implementation of child rights and contribute to the concealment of right violation. Despite this limitation, we put that the African Child Policy Forum, we use available, comparable, and reliable data and information to construct the child friendliness index. Now,
For this research, this is an interdisciplinary research. So I think from the point of social policy framework, law and strategic analysis, like I just said now, the CFI, the HCF, the completed CFI are very closer to us that there is a limitation. They cannot measure child participation. And we know that knowledge extended now. We cannot look at knowledge from one person. We have to look at it from different angles. So in this situation, we are not going to extend that if they are done measuring. We are going to use the literary method, different text analysis to answer children's participation and how it is depicted in this text. Measurement of CFI. Next slide. Now, measurement of CFI. What are the things that you look at when they are measuring the CFI? One, absence of natural law that protects children. Before I go on, I forgot to mention that in 2023, Nigeria measured number 36 out of 52. So they look at 52 countries and they will rank it. But I found it interesting that in 2009, when they released the one that they sat down in 2009 and released in 2010, the 2009 documentation that came out first, Nigeria performed better. In fact, Nigeria was number 9. But at that point, you know that we said that every year they review and they get more information. But last year, 2023, Nigeria performed number 36, and Nigeria is now regarded as a less child-friendly country. What are these things to look at? Absence of natural law to protect children, enforcement of law, reduction of gender disparity. What is the difference between male child and female child? What are the provisions against child trafficking? Is there a prohibition against corporal punishment in the society? Do they have access to free education? What is the minimum age for marriage? What is the minimum age for criminal responsibility? And what is the minimum age for military service and employment? It is all of these measurements that they use for the CFI. They were also adapted to interpreting our text. Interpretation. I'll run quickly through. So I used Rukayo Banjos Nyashi, which was published in 2023, by Bloomsbury. Now, in this play, let me give you a quick brief of it. It's about a little girl. It is set in northern Nigeria. Before that, I know we all know that Nigeria is a multi-ethnic society. And if we are aware, in the south here, we have the laws that guide us and all of that. But in the north, they use more of the penal code. And religion plays a big factor in that. And that is why if you move from the south to the north, you might see difference in enforcement of law and availability of natural law that we have said earlier. In Rukaya Banjos Nyashi, our main character, Awa, is a 15-year-old girl that wants to go to school. But because in our culture, a woman is not seen or heard. She's married out, she has been married out to a young man, Ibrahim. Ibrahim is educated. In fact, he is a university undergraduate. You see the disparity now in gender. He's a university undergraduate, but Awa has been restricted from getting an education. So what does she do? She now has to disguise herself as a boy to go to school. And that is where they found out. And when it was found out, she was said she was going to face the punishment of the whole town, of the whole village, for breaking the law against girls going to school. Because in that town, what they do is that once you are 10 years old, or not even by age, once the woman starts seeing a monthly period, she is now declared as a woman, and she is only allowed to go outside to work. When she works, any man that sees her and is interested in her, we approach her and marry her. Once you have been married, you remain inside, never to be seen, until when you reach menopause. You give birth to your children, you are used, you are spent before you can now come out back to society. So in that society, you'll see only very young girls, very old women, and men. Gender disparity. So now when Awa was arrested, there was nobody to save her and all of that. And she cried and begged that this was why she had to do that. She wanted to go to school. We can see that that is lack of access to education. We can also see that there was nobody she could report to, no social welfare, no enforcement of law. in that place. And the age which used to get married was 15. But in Nigerian constitution, 18 years is supposed to be the age of adulthood. That means that is child marriage. We have failed once more again in getting the CFI. Another play I want to quickly use to extend this is written by Omar Martina and it's titled The Taste of Justice. In this play, we see gender abuse, sexual abuse, rape, and all of that. A quick synopsis of the play. The Taste of Justice is about an 18-year-old girl that is sentenced to death for killing her uncle. Her uncle happens to be the only guardian she has in the world, but she killed him, and while she was awaiting, she was given a lawyer to protect her, to go to court for her and try to seek a change. But she was mute and refused to talk all through the legal proceedings until the lawyer came and informed her that she had been sentenced to death by hanging. And that was when she opened her mouth to speak. In the course of talking, we discovered that her uncle had been raping her. In fact, he was raping her. She had 5 abortions in 2 years. Apart from raping her younger sister and younger brother, she had a 6-year-old brother and a 10-year-old sister. The uncle was also raping the brother and the sister. It is important that we raise this fact. Do you know that in Nigerian law, it is only recently, as recent as last year, that the law against rape of a male child was changed? We're talking about gender disparity. Gender disparity is not only when girls do not go to school. It is also when men cannot seek justice for rape. It is also when men cannot go out because they are a child, we said child, a child can be a male or a female. So it was as recent as last year, 2023, that Nigeria has now adjusted its law on male rape. Going forward, we find that from literary text, we can exhume meaning. From literary text, it is, like she said, a representation of history. From this literary text, we can see that the government is failing in the implementation of the protection of child rights, and that policies must go beyond documentation. There's a reason for saying this. Eswatini was regarded at one point to be very low in the child friendliness index. But because Eswatini now signed a law, and that's why I said availability of natural law, he signed a law that all children must go to school. It went up the ladder on the child friendliness index. Why? The social policies and that do this law said the reason they allow for that, I didn't know that there's limitation in implementation, but that the reason they allow for that is that sometimes when you make this law, you can influence the environment for changing. You can influence the environment to change because in the absence of law, there is no sin. But when we now say that we have created the law, we can now talk about enforcement. Enforcement might be poor, but we can at least say that there is a law. So on this point, I conclude this paper by saying that we all can work together to achieve this thing. So it's not for the government alone. Policies must go beyond documentation. Theories we discuss must go beyond the AC rooms. Let us take it to the streets where it will be felt. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think I speak something. That's about breakdown of this. I want to thank you once again. This is just one. And I have a full book, and that's kind of listening the rule I illustrate myself here. I just it highlights the facts of the collections, that exist amongst the papers. I mean, first is the fact that these are papers that center on representation, even the performance aspect of it. But something also comes up from what you're talking about. It is the fact that the text that you engage, in some respects, deal with didacticism. In other words, there's always something very useful as a system to tease out of this. And this is a very big function of literature, the idea that it builds and speaks to society. So there is that. Underlining these presentations is also the big question of various human activities. So we're looking at adulthood, we're looking at China. And for me, when they speak to us, it became even clear that the absence, the mental absence, as well as cognitive absence, can trigger a lot of charge. Yeah. Similar. So mental issues is in the next and also endangered activity. All of this, come out by the event, presentations. Again, these presentations present their own problems. The category, child or childhood, I would find from listening to this presentation, is taken for granted. I mean, the presenters assume that we know who a child is, and then so to us on the basis of that assumption. I differ from that in the sense that, for me, even what you presented, revealed that childhood is quite problematic as a category that can be defined. It's not easy and uneasy. That's true. That becomes very clear. Because what I had in the presentations and analysis that you presented is basically the fact of the human category. So the scholars should be crisscrossing boundaries. They cannot fully establish them as child keeping. Neither could you say, quite authoritatively, that they are. So they struggle the two divides. And that clause allows them to take up as existing and embracing. So that's one of the things that I see. Finally, I will open things for the presentations also for me. Invite me to look at something very critical with respect to representations of children. And all of the presentation brings that. And it's a question, I will frame it as a question for you. Without time, you can speak to that. And this is important. Who, in all the text and what you consider, and I'm quite particularly interested in the performance piece that establish part of your work. We don't hear the voices of these children. They are spoken by actors. They are framed, depicted, represented, and determined by adults. In the policy, the instruments that they're talking about child-friendly index. Again, these are adults speculating about the well-being, or as they put it in another instrument, they call it the best interest of the child.
Yes, best interest policy.
Right. So it's not the children who are saying this is. So basically, there is a sense in which children are the silent order in policies, in affairs that are actually deal essentially with them. And that presents the problem of its own. Allow me to see my mouth. Okay, stop to you here. Each presentation, so we can do, we have all line of things. So if we don't have questions, please, so we will go first with you, followed by this, and then so you will be informed. Okay, yes.
Honestly, I'm excited, really excited, and speaks volume of the role of women in nation building. Let me commend all our speakers, all our presenters. Your papers are very rich, your analysis are very clear, and you are open to a lot of issues. We came with the first speaker. Mine is just like I'm just curious. You have done this pre-play and gotten a lot of wonderful responses. And I said, what are you organizing? So you want to say, why organizing? You are going to one community, you are taking in other community, all in Delta. And this phenomenon is everywhere. These issues are about. What are you doing to see whether you can bring it to the fore? So that the general, the generality of the Nigerian population of Africa can be a prime beneficiary. I know you will be limited by funding, or you will be limited by maybe the media space. Because have you made conscious effort to engage them? Or maybe address or seek opinion of a public spirited individual who may be willing to partner with you in what you are doing? I think that will go a long way in helping us. I'm saying this because I am a victim of broken home. When you were saying all those things, a lot came to my mind. That I am here today is by the grace of God. I would have been on the streets. And so I see a kind of attachment to your presentation. I can say I can reflect on my experiences as a victim of broken home. But I want you to take it further. It will go a long way, one, in helping marriages, two, in helping government to take making conscious, deliberate policies. Three, it will also help to redeem these children who are supposed to be lost. And then it goes a long way. You sponsor abuse, wonderful, great presentation. I think also you should bring it to the fore. Find a way, I don't know how, to bring it to the fore, so all of us can benefit. Thank you all, and God bless you.
Well, thank you very much for those. In case you're wondering, after this presentation, I think you just click on the they have solved the problem after finally. So, all right, thank you very much. If you want to respond, do you want to just let's keep this later with you.
See, they say charity begins at home. You know, I started from our home, from this to that to that. I started from our home, and I belong to SOTA, which is the Association of the Theatre and Movement. So take it to that way, looking at the theatre perspective. One person cannot just take it around Nigeria. You can get SOTA, but get the theatre practitioner in different areas. If they can see what I have done and they'll be able to look at it and say, okay, we can do something. That's why I'm looking at the theatre perspective. Where theatre and the theatre are trying to bring productions that will solve this problem. If we have those kind of production all over, before you know, every village is touched.
Thank you.
Well, I would just like to say that literature has a way of they have a way of sensitizing the public about issues that may not be so obvious to people. And I remember that I discussed this with someone, and the person was telling me to go around churches, go around the ministries, or probably make a handbook out of this. I believe that my research is a work in progress, and that other literary scholars will also embrace this land right of the hand and start from there.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, we'll go to them. So please keep it brief.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I think virtually all of you are reached out, and you've actually spoken to me because I teach in seminars. And most of my kids are teaching in the public of the nation. I mean, in the public of the nation. And if I tell you that in a class of maybe 5, I could talk about children from functional people should be about 20 after. And I've seen that you've all, dealt with childhood, but like the child doesn't know where are the children in your works. It seems not visible when it comes to the issue that concerns very. And again, maybe I want to have Madam President, please, your work, is it available? That play, is it available?
Okay, yes, there will be something.
Okay. I think
No,
that's yeah, one question for all of you. We've been talking broken homes, broken homes. Will children out of wedlock maybe part of this, or they have a special Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Chair. So, was able to take a stab at that question? Children out of wedlock don't necessarily.
Yes, I want to say yes, because then some of them they want some have more problem than you know, because you don't know who to stay with. I have a friend like that. I was staying with the mother. The mother got married, and the father, the stepfather said you can't stay here. And started living from one place to another, investigate, living from one holiday, he lived with an uncle, and the person wanted to rape her. She ran to, and eventually she came back to school with mental problems. He took us and mates to start to, yeah, so when the mother came, he said, no, he said, no, don't take her again, don't let her. So it's also a problem. It's also this kind of problem that we're trying to solve.
I'll start by saying, speaking to the issue raised about I think that's the area where children spiritual community. The text I looked at the children with spiritual differences because they are spiritual children, so it's easy to represent them.
If I can trouble that,
Okay.
the students that are talking,
Yes.
they are created by an adult.
Yes, they are
What
created.
extra?
They are
Adult creating voices.
Okay. Yes, there's a number of scholars have also spoken about that. We trying to look at it, like the religious, children also spoke about that. When adults create for children, many times they create for everything. They return to their place as a child, created from that time. So they create as a child, not their adults there. But then again, there's still another issue because now they are looking back at it from the perspective of hindsight. There are still be some implications. They're not necessarily children. However, in contemporary times, children are put into space. Children are beginning to write their children as children. So we have text them that issue.
Yes, right. So I wouldn't ask you to one side, something that your presentation also threw us, question of maybe. So you talk about the non-combatant children. I'm assuming that that's Christians. Because how about, say, children affected by war, or by conflict, rather than non-combatant children? So non-combatant children, it's something else. We can talk about that as you want to take some of that question? About children are
No, because I don't think that it is about children are open. So I believe that the more technology, things are changing. We are changing our framework. Just like I just said, children are from birth. Yes, children. But if the reason for them children out of birth is that we have the concept of family. And what is our concept of family? Father, mother, and children. But that's not extended because we're not having blended families. We are having single parent family. We are having dual sex family. So I don't start going if I would not see categories or categories. So we always have to adjust.
Yeah, that sounds very good. Yeah, number 3. So please let's give you brief and do that they will kick us out of here any minute. Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. So my name is Daniela. Ma, in your presentation, you said something. You said broken or children from broken homes normally have fear or feel insecure. So my question is, how can these children develop confidence and security?
Yeah, so she's responding to a thing that children from local home are not creative. How can such children build confidence?
That's where we come in as theater artists. When you watch performance or you are part of that performance, you see yourself in that and you want to come out of it. But we need to know that you are not supposed to be like that. You are not supposed to be afraid. It's the situation that has kept you or that has made you like that. And when you keep on watching positive performance and you see people doing well, you want to be like that. And you want to come out of it. And that's where we come. Right. That's the theater facility.
Thank you very much. So we'll go to our final.
So thank you for the privilege to be to ask this question. I would say that your divisions are very insightful. Next page. Something. Well, my question goes to, I don't know whether to write a question or to comment on interpretation or distribution. But I would like to address the first speaker, maybe others. Okay, that's fine. Now, I observed in your presentation that you stated in your introduction that Broken Home was first recorded in 1840.
1840, but
1840. So now, is it Broken Home as a phrase or Broken Home as an event?
Okay, broken home at the concept.
As a concept.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Broken Home as a concept. I think you need to indicate that because so as to not confuse, because I the point I was getting you. Now, I also noticed that you used psychoanalysis as your theoretical framework. Now, I was considering, I just want to ask, have you considered Erik Erikson's theory of psychosocial development? Yes, it has 8 stages. I will just mention the first stage is identity and role intuition. That's the first stage. Now, psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud's landmark in theory. He published a book in 1899, and that